Ayo budget gamers, it has been a while and since the last video some things have shown up in the mail, but today we're only looking at this one. If the packaging didn't give it away, we're looking at some Kllisre RAM off of AliExpress. This is uber budget DDR4 that has been available within the last 30 days for as low as $31 for a 32 gig kit. To save on time and some of the boring stuff, rather than a deep dive, we're just going to do a quick rundown. This 32 gig kit has a 3200 MHz default profile, not an XMP one, with a stated CAS latency of 22, although it actually boots at CL20. Curiously, it also boots at that speed on only 1.20 volts, rather than the more common 1.35 volts in budget RAM. They are massive DIMMs coming in with a Z height of almost 42 millimeters. And for comparison, this ballistics RAM, which is already kind of a chonk with the RGB on top, measures up at only 37 millimeters, so cooler clearance may be a concern for the AliExpress kit. Finally, and perhaps second only in importance to performance, they do look very good installed and subtly diffuse the surrounding RGB. But is this stuff any good, and does it game? Now, all good benchmarks should have a point of comparison, and for this testing, our yardstick is going to be this Team Group T-Create kit that's normally pretty budget-friendly, coming in at about $51 for a 32 gig kit at the time of upload. This stuff is 3200 MHz CL16 RAM, but which requires 1.35 volts to enable its full speed. Finally, a quick look at system specs, and then we're off to the races. First up is our standard synthetic Cinebench R15, where the Team Group kit does come out on top, but by a margin so small that it's basically a rounding error. 4 points in multi-core and 1 point in single-core are really insignificant differences, and actually bode well for the AliExpress Kllisre RAM. Moving on to the more gamery Fire Strike, the AliExpress kit not only holds its own, but actually comes out with a win of about 800 points in the physics testing. And it actually did this consistently, as the numbers on screen are averaged from 3 runs per kit. Although much like Cinebench, 800 points in the physics scoring really isn't the gap it might appear to be, but it does seem to imply that gaming on this kit might be worthwhile. Now that Valve has killed CSGO, Ashes of the Singularity is going to have to suffice as our CPU-centric game that separates the wheat from the chaff. And here we have a dead heat with both RAM kits separated by a meaningless 0.2 FPS on average. For a massive multi-threaded gaming load like this one, apparently the AliExpress Kllisre kit is going to be just fine. Forza Horizon 5 is the first benchmark to show any appreciable difference between the two sets of RAM, with the lower latency Team Group kit edging out the AliExpress contender by 3 FPS on average and by 4 FPS in the 1% lows. Still, not a bad showing for a cheap import kit. Halo Infinite partially flips the script, with the AliExpress kit being bested by 2 FPS on average, but actually seeing a slight, but consistent advantage in 1% lows. These numbers are so close though that it's really hard to call one or the other decidedly better. Horizon Zero Dawn then pushes over 180 FPS with either kit, yielding yet another functionally insignificant difference between the two. Borderlands 3 also comes down to a photo finish, with both kits managing 194 FPS on average, with only a 2 FPS difference in the 1% lows. And finally, Shadow of the Tomb Raider produces one last result that is functionally identical between both kits, with a performance delta of 1 FPS on average and a minimum frame rate that is exactly the same. So for conclusion time, this Kllisre kit is certainly good, but we can't go so far as to say that it's great. The higher latency doesn't affect performance meaningfully here, but in more exhaustive testing, there are undoubtedly cases where it will show up. Cooler clearance isn't guaranteed because, again, these things are huge, and motherboard compatibility is questionable owing to that default 3200 MHz profile, while also being on no major board qualified vendor list. However, if you live somewhere with absurd RAM prices like, say, Brazil, or simply want to save a few bucks on RAM so that you can move up a tier on your PSU or SSD, it's absolutely not a bad buy. For fun, I will be keeping this kit in my personal system for the next 6 months to see how it holds up. With that, thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one.